The spinal cracks after a breast session are always so nice.
Good.
Yeah, I feel good. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. I can go to bed.
So what is this you're setting up?
My phone?
You're setting up your phone to record our talk?
Yeah. I mean, my side of it.
Okay. I don't know if I want to be recorded.
You don't have to do. Well, I don't
Oh,
think like it'll be like this one.
okay. All
It'll be
right.
like sound bites um from my end. And then if you want to have your questions and your side on it, then I can easily do that, but you don't have to if you're uncomfortable with it. And also you can tell me that you're uncomfortable with it being recorded.
Oh, I'm just not used to this. Not used to my interviewee setting up their own version of
Recording back.
the situation. I'm like, what's happening? Uh,
That's funny. You're funny.
I feel very out of control.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Always. Oh, you know that. Okay. All right. Um, yeah, this was is this already for the interview, by the way?
Yeah, I'm recording for your interview. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought we're still closing up session. Okay, well then I fucking hurry up. Because that's not nice.
Well, I can stop and start the meeting again.
That's why I was gonna do it before. I wasn't present, but I know how you roll. So I was like, should I set this up now? And then
I like to catch you.
I know you do, which is why I thought maybe I should do this beforehand, but you were very adamant about getting started. And so I wanted to honor that too. All right, but I'm ready. So I'm turning my mic on. Okay.
I like to catch you when you're still in your spaced out space.
Spaced out space. Well, that's good. Because I'm still there.
Okay.
Not fully. But here we are.
Okay. All right. So how are you feeling? How was your breath work?
It was good. It was, like I said, I haven't done it in a long time. Having had my space held. Um, yeah, it was really lovely. And then the song choices today, especially one in particular, the Ghost soundtrack, the Unchained Melody, but the musical version of it
The
hit the
city
vibe.
of the City of Prague Philharmonic version.
Oh, so good. Yeah, I gotta have that
Mm-hmm.
when you're done. Yeah, hit me hard, brought all kinds of stuff up.
Like what?
Well, it starts in these abstract things. First I thought, oh my God, I got really sad. I think I started crying and I was like, I miss Patrick Swayze.
Hmm.
And then I was like, well, you don't know Patrick Swayze. I was like, yeah, but he meant a lot to me. And then it just kept growing. Like, what did he stood for? Like, why is Patrick Swayze important to me?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I was like, authenticity and integrity. Like I had this longing for that era where actors spoke honestly about who they were in interviews, about their losses, about their hopes, about their fears, where, they went to his ranch and he rode horses with them, like interesting stuff versus selling a product.
Mm-hmm.
I missed the time when artists were someone to look up to. So that came up, and then the positive of it, like that's what, I've been looking for a while, and what I'm building a physical.
Okay, go back to when you said, and I'm building, because that's where it froze for me.
Oh, yeah, and then I kind of realized that that's what I'm building, that's why I've held out, that's why I've been waiting. I haven't been seeking work as an actor. I haven't been seeking anything in the industry because I've been really wanting to get more specific about who I want to work with, what I want to create, and how I want it to feel above all. Process of it, the doing of it. Mm, yeah, that was nice. Made me realize that the last 3 years were very necessary for me.
Okay.
Very painful.
Tell me how they were necessary.
Um, I mean, they disconnected me from everything I ever knew, you know?
Mm, okay.
Like people talk about systemic racism and systemic well, I don't know, do people talk about systemic misogyny? Is that systemic?
Um, sure.
Is it? I don't know. Till today I don't quite fully get what is meant by systemic. I feel like it's thrown around too much.
An old system that's passed down is the way I understand it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense. So I feel like I got to discover my own systemic prejudice,
Okay.
which I've never experienced before. I can't believe I'm saying this with a smile. I've never got to do that before. I did not like that at first, but um, yeah, the
What's
system, the system failed to be one that I can exist in, or it was the story of what the system around me was, i.e., COVID, and how the system was going to accept me as a human being, was being told as one where it was like, you might have to go to jail being yourself. You definitely are not working anymore in this system that you're not allowed. Your people out the door. And it was like certain places, airlines, there was a lot of people that basically decided to say you're not part of the system anymore, which
because, wait, let's back up.
because of
Because
okay,
of a choice that you were making about your
yeah,
body.
correct, because of a choice that I made for my body. I
Right.
decided not to be vaccinated, and yeah, that then unraveled this disconnection from the system, forced, not that I wanted to. I had no idea that that choice was going to be so impactful. I had a feeling, I was like, oh, this could get bad, but I didn't know it was going to get that bad. I lost my house, I lost my job, I lost not friends, but I realized how many of my friends were like, "You're on your own, kid. We feel for you, but we're not going to speak out for you."
Mhm.
That was most everybody, I would say. And I don't anybody for it. It was hard. There was a lot of pressure on everybody. And so me and my family kind of, we got into a bus. We bought a bus. We insulated. We made our own system
Mhm.
that we could function in. We found a way to find money to do what we needed to do. And because I wasn't getting the big jobs anymore, I wasn't even taking part in that. We downsized everything to still remain free, because that is the most important thing to me, is freedom.
Mhm.
um, and we had to build our own new system, and then you get to start to question whether you want to be part of the old system.
Mhm.
You then, people are you going to go back to work? What about your acting career? You were so close and all that. Yeah, so you get to reevaluate everything. So in a way, this being shut out was the best thing that happened. It made me ask all the right questions to myself.
So, is there anything else you want to share about that experience before I ask you the next question?
About that experience,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, I hope we learn. I feel like everybody says that at every point in history, but it is funny how we repeat the same things. We're railing. Everybody's so aware of not, um, you know, judging people for being different. And on one side, we're so like, freedom for everybody's expression of choices. Right? Talk about the transgender, the sexuality conversation. What's my sex? What I identify with? And yet, on the other hand, we make the same mistake again and separate from another group of human, and we keep forgetting that we're just one big energy field, and we're all the same. So that's it. That's all I have to say about that.
I definitely was scared during the beginning, first 2 years at least of the pandemic. And I definitely had views that were different from yours. You know,
Everybody did. There was only
um,
a handful of us.
but a lot of my quote unquote spiritual friends were on the same page with you. And that was difficult to navigate our relationship through that because I was really scared and convinced that, okay, yes, you have a choice about your body, but then what felt like was then it becomes you're making a choice for me too if you're going to be around me, because what if you give me this disease that for some reason ends up killing me or making me really, really sick for a really long time? Because I've struggled with my health and I've struggled with um, chronic fatigue and Epstein-Barr and like just dealing with sickness a lot of my life. So I was pretty scared that I wouldn't be strong um, if I got COVID. And I really felt like I did need to protect myself. And so to me, it felt like if someone else was choosing not to be vaccinated, that then they need to choose not to be around me. Or like I'm not going to be around them. And like, so it's
I
like
had a lot of
it's like if someone if my mother-in-law is staying with us and she gets strep throat and she doesn't want to take she has an allergic reaction to um, what do you call it, the antibiotics that you take for strep throat. So I said, well, I'm really sorry, but you can't stay in the house because you can give strep throat to the kids. Like it's your choice if you don't want to take antibiotic. Now, I don't usually take antibiotics myself pretty much ever, except for if I had strep throat. But I basically said to her, you can't stay here if you're not going to take antibiotics because I can't have the kids getting strep throat because I can't have them not being able to go to school, and then I can't have them going to school and thinking they have it and then not knowing if they have it or not and then giving strep throat to all the other kids and all the other families. So it was like, I understand the point of view of you shouldn't have to do anything to your body you don't want to do, and I agree with that. But I also feel like, but if you're going to put yourself in a work situation where I want to work too, right? Um, how can I protect myself from you if you accidentally cough on me and I don't want to get what you have if you have it?
yeah.
I think
I
it's really complicated. It's
yeah,
not just like, well, you're the victim of this mandate. I don't see it that way. I see it like, well, were you going to wear a mask all the time?
But even now, even after now that you've heard the real story of what it actually was,
Um,
you don't think
no, I'm just talking about like people did get sick and some people did, a lot of people died. And even if you gave me COVID, right? And even if you gave me COVID and I could handle it, my system could handle it and I was fine eventually. Like maybe it take me a month and a half or maybe I get long COVID. But if I did give it to my mother-in-law and she did die, which happened, a lot of people died, like it's just about, to me it's about responsibility. So I know we have very different views on this.
I don't know. Well, this is a great segue because I mean, first of all, let me say I didn't have a problem with that. There was if somebody genuine like you just did told me they were scared, then I'm like, okay, you're being honest. You're scared. I'm happy to support you. And I don't want to be on a set where people are scared. You shouldn't like I'm like if this was a big pandemic, what the fuck are we doing making movies if everybody's dying? Like what the fuck? Oh, because we're scared to not make money. So I was confused about that. The fear factor made sense to me. So if anybody said, "Hey, can you please?" So I never wore a mask. I was like, I was on the whole other side of it. And well, I did where I really had to. And when people came to me and had the courage to say, "I'm really scared. I have a disease. Would you please put your mask on?" I'd be like, "No problem."
Hmm.
I just couldn't because I don't trust the narrative in general. It comes from media, that comes from politics. Not that I distrust it from the get-go, but I listen to it and I make my own up and I come from a medical background. So my story was just a different one. So I have a lot of respect for that. If somebody can acknowledge that they're fearful and they ask for my support to deal with that fear, happy to do it. The bigger thing that I think you're right um, is my fundamental difference about thinking of responsibility. To me, it's perfect. Everybody creates their stuff. I don't think you just catch strep throat because you catch strep throat because you cough and then you get it and it's regardless. It's how fit are your kids? It's how fearful are you? How often do you live in fear that it lowers your like I never got COVID once. Maybe once, we don't know. I never got tested. Um, and everybody that's vaccinated is constantly getting COVID still now. And again, let's not generalize, and it's not about that. But again, to me, I'm like, the problem with science that I have, it's not advanced enough to really say anything about health because they cannot study their subjects 24/7, what they say, how they're with their spouse, how they're eating. They don't have that luxury. So I think we know very, very little. And
I
so,
understand your perspective about health and wellness and sickness and everything you're explaining.
yeah,
And it makes sense. And also, I'm not an expert and I don't know enough as a scientist or a doctor. And I didn't know enough during the pandemic to know what was real and what wasn't real. I knew that people were dying. I know that's not made up or pretend. And I knew that I
the question
I
is not made.
and I knew that I didn't want to get sick and I knew that I didn't want to give that to any of my parents
Yeah,
because
no,
they might not be strong in mind and body and spirit like you are, regardless of their belief. Like, I don't know what their belief is, but if there's a possibility that this was going to affect them in the way like my girlfriend's dad died from COVID, then I don't want to be a part. I didn't want to be a part of that.
yeah, it makes total sense. I get that. That's what I'm saying. I get it. I get how strong the fear was. I'm just surprised at what it made people do.
There was a lot of confusion and division and fear, and I think, yeah, that was driven by media and not knowing what was real and what wasn't real. And I think that the fear was probably making people more susceptible to getting sick. And I think that the loneliness that the isolation caused people, especially older people, could be just as much, if not more, of an issue for people's health because more older people are dying of loneliness than anything else, really.
I think so. That's what I'm saying. I feel like neither of you and I are an expert and we don't know anything, but just looking at it now, I just don't think that many people died. I really don't. I think people died, yes, but I don't see how we lost all these young, like, yeah, a lot of old people died. And I always said, people are like, what about your grandma? I was like, she's 90 or at the time at 89, she can die. Bye bye. I have a really healthy relationship with death. And
Right,
I,
but it's
with
not
my
just
own son,
90-year-olds that died.
even with my own son. And again, this is so I'm not making a point about COVID.
Hmm.
I'm making a point just about um, that some of the isolation that I experienced and some of the systematic, like realizing I don't fit into the system, has nothing to do with COVID. It goes deeper than that.
Right.
You know, like if my son, like our first discussion when we were pregnant was if something like tragic, you know, they make you take all these shots and they want to like give the baby all these things because they're like, he's most likely going to die. It's really bad. Like having a child, you need to have medical support. And I said no. You know, we said no to all of it.
Hmm.
I was like, if he dies, that's his choice. If I die, it's my choice. You know, I'm a strong believer that everything is perfect. And, you know, on one hand, we bitch about the overpopulation of the planet. And on
Wait,
the other,
hold on. Wait, you said I'm a strong believer of, and it cut out.
I'm a strong believer of everything is perfect.
Okay.
You know, we rail against the war right now. We rail against this. And I'm like, these are all things that are happening because they're all these things had to happen perfectly lined. Billions of people had to behave a certain way for our society to show up the way it's showing up right now.
Hmm.
Whether that's racist, non-racist, vaccine, not, it's all perfect.
Yeah, you're
Which
saying we need the contrast.
right,
Hmm.
which is why I asked to see, hey, where are my people, and is anybody like in ready to like not believe in that narrative of COVID specifically? But I never railed against the system. I never wanted to demonstrate. I never joined any of that. I didn't fight it. And I really did my best to work with any judgments on my own because same thing, I created this. I created the fact that I lost my career. And that's what I expected from the people that were scared of COVID. I'm just like, just take responsibility for your shit. I'm not responsible for you dying of a fucking virus. Wake up.
Hmm.
It's not the reality. And that goes on and on and on, right? Like we're really on the train of wanting to find out and change who's responsible for our, you know, for our misery, for the danger of our health. We got it all
So,
wrong.
so the thing is that there's a lot of different types of people, but what happens is that we put people in categories, right? And so we think, well, if you say this one thing, like if you say what you just said, wake up, or if you say, I'm not responsible for people dying, all of a sudden people are going to put you into a specific category. They're going to see a certain image of what that means about who you are as a person. So I remember the divisiveness of now certain people's behavior is different from yours. You're not the kind of person, but there are people who are saying the same types of things you're saying, but are also going up to people and coughing in their face, like on purpose.
Yeah, but that's you can say that. So what's your say that again? Like what do you mean by that, or what's your point?
So I'm saying that it's really easy for people to put people in categories when they hear certain phrases. And I think that's what was happening was we became incredibly divided into basically two categories of
Yeah,
vaccinated and non-vaccinated. And then that also became political, which I don't think it should have been a political statement, whether you're vaccinated or non-vaccinated. I don't think that should be aligned with a specific party.
right.
That has to do with a personal preference of how you run your life. It has nothing to do with it shouldn't have anything to do with who you are voting for or what politics you're in agreement with. But it
Right.
became a political issue. And so it's like, oh, well, if you're not vaccinated, you're this, or you're a Republican, or you're a Trump supporter, or
Yeah, I mean I wonder if that's just our attention span. People People just prefer sound bites and they make their entire mind up about a human being because of a sound bite. And I think that might be really loud. You might want to wait that out.
So the other thing that I think is on the flip side of, because there's fear on all sides. Like there's a fear of you having your freedom taken from you. And well, for some people,
With some people, yes,
for
100%.
some people, there's a fear of having their freedom taken from them, and that fear runs so deep that they're willing to cough or spit in someone's face or yell at someone or, do use behaviors
Yeah. Yes.
to be offensive on purpose in order to like prove a point.
Well, I think they want to somehow impede on the other side's freedom in order to make them feel how they feel. They're expressing physically how they feel to be like, can't you see what you're doing to me? Yeah, that's the old story of war.
And so the way that I was viewing um, certain people's behavior of their expression of their fear of taking their freedom away was I was viewing that as, and I'm not saying this is correct, but I was viewing that as childish because I'm like seeing people, being horrible to people in stores who are trying to uphold whatever the rule was at that time in that store. And, there's a difference between like keeping your distance and doing your own thing. It's just difficult because one of the things it highlighted for me is personal space. Because we never talked about as a society about personal space and like 6 feet around me is my bubble.
Well, I think I don't know. We probably differ on that one too. I mean, that to me was part of those things where I'm like, wait, what? Your personal space is wherever you go and you create a space where you can have that. It's not your right. When you're in a jungle with trees everywhere, closer than 6 feet, it is not your right to require 6 feet. That snake that's right there that can kill you, that's your problem. You do not have the right to just say, this is my space. So to me, that was always weird that I was like, wait, they have control over how we interact. Again, it's that personal freedom. I
Well,
was like,
there's a difference between a snake in a jungle and a human being in a grocery store.
yeah, the snake's actually dangerous.
Humans are dangerous too.
Well, again, yeah, this is one thing that's why I've never talked about it publicly in this way because I do not, and that's how I acted. I was like, if COVID is going to kill me or my loved ones, it is time to go. Your body is so fucked up, and you haven't been listening for so long that it's time. When you're dying, it's your time to go. That was your choice, whether you're conscious of having lived all those choices that bring you to death. And this is the heart of the issue. This is what makes people uncomfortable. This is where people split when you, I guess, I'm a Puritan when it comes to that, or I'm a hardcore. Like, I'm very hardcore with it's perfect.
Right.
And
So, but what about like certain medicines that have come along through, whether you believe that that's because of God or because of science or both, that have actually saved people, like polio medicines, polio vaccines saved
let's
lots
not get
of
into that
people.
because that's a narrative that I'm not equipped enough to talk about. I know it splits everybody. I just posted, hey, check out the Robert Kennedy uh,
Right.
interview, and he talks about the polio. That's a whole nother narrative that he has, and he's been working on vaccines for a long time. Um, so it's just one of those things where I'm like, I don't know. I have my version. Like, I've never gotten vaccinated. Um, I think I have one. And again, all of medicine, besides stitching me up, setting bones, all that preventative, and I'm not talking about preventative how you eat. I'm talking about vaccines. I'm talking about Um, any kind of medication that people are on is prolonging your time to figure out what the hell are you doing wrong in life. And I don't mean wrong, but how are you not living to your healthiest?
Hmm.
Yes, medicine keeps you alive, but also how much does it poison you? How much does it make this harder? How much does it make you, we don't know. I mean, we say that vaccines have zero impact and that they're so safe, but yet there hasn't been one study. And again,
Well,
I'm just not saying I'm going one way or the other. I'm just saying nobody has the equipment to actually check what the vaccines, McDonald's, our phones, the stress, Instagram, what all that combined does on our body.
I imagine McDonald's is just as bad, if not worse, than,
Oh, 100%.
a vaccine. Look, it's interesting because I never wanted my children to have all these vaccines that they're required to have in order to go to school. And what I did was I delayed and delayed and delayed. So I was always having to have the doctors write notes to the school saying, yes, we're going to do it, but we're on a slow schedule. So that was the compromise, was basically as few as were actually required, but that we did it in our way. So it was like I found the compromise, I found the middle way. Now I don't know if someone else was the father of my children, maybe my children would not be vaccinated because Jake was very much wanting to have, follow the rules.
I got a question for you because just I'm so fascinated. Because we never talked about this, you and I as friends. So this is like a first for us.
Hmm.
Um, if you found out tomorrow or today, undeniably, and in your body, soul, and everything believed it, that the whole vaccine, the COVID, all that was stories and it's false, what would you do? And you find out that actually a lot of the problems of any kind of chronic things or all those conspiracy theories um that some of them have proven to be true were right. I'm just curious, what would be your reaction emotionally, thought
Well,
wise?
so like, are you saying that we were getting chipped by the vaccine, or are you
No,
say
no, no, not at all. No,
you
it's just
say you
it's just
saying you saying
it's
that there's
now
a some rich person that like started it, and what are you saying?
I'm saying you find out the opioid crisis. The benefits are not really there. We're finding out that the depressants actually don't really help and that it's killed a lot of people. You're just finding out that the narrative of it's been saving lives and all that wasn't true. And you're finding out that it's just highly toxic
Right.
and
So
that the benefits never outweighed the risks. Just that, nothing more than that.
you're saying that if I found out for sure that the vaccine didn't actually help anyone,
And probably caused a lot of harm.
what would I do?
Yeah, and all the behavior, the masks. Like I'm just saying, I'm sure you've heard the theories. Just make them true and make them accept them. Who does that make you, and how would you act,
Hmm.
and how would you feel?
I mean, there was already a part of that was coming to me of feeling like, okay, there was an extreme here that I bought into that wasn't necessarily true. I think there's a middle reality. I don't think it's one extreme or the other. I don't think that so point being is that I already started to feel like, oh, okay, I could see how like there was an extreme behavior that I got into a space of like deep fear. And that deep fear, being in a space of fear is horrible for our nervous system. It's horrible for our health. Um, so getting COVID is probably on par with or less than the fear and all of this. So yeah, there's a version where I see what I was buying into was an extreme for sure. Um, and also, along with what you're saying is like, well, how is that not perfect in the sense that I got to experience that contrast to see what it was like to have a completely different relationship to how I operate in the world and how I relate to my friends. Like maybe that was perfect. Maybe those conversations were perfect. Maybe um, me seeing what it was like to be so aware of my boundaries and where I was judging and where I was in fear. Like, I do wonder going back if, going back now, if I wasn't afraid. See, the thing is, like, my best friend was in the same thinking as you. She was like, I was never afraid. She kept getting COVID. Her family kept getting COVID. They got it like 3 or 4 times. And, you know, wasn't following any of the rules or whatever. Um, and it was hard, but we stayed friends through it. We tried not to talk about it that much. And that was the thing with our families because it was very divisive in within our own families. Um, so, I think it would have been if I had been on your side of your way of thinking, I think it would have been isolating just as much, but in a different way.
Right.
You know,
Like,
but
oh,
I mean, I wouldn't have been afraid, but I probably would have still had a lot of judgment, which I think you did have. Like
oh yeah, oh, yeah, they came up. Yeah, of course.
so and it's funny too, because as soon as we didn't have to wear masks anymore, and as soon as like most people were vaccinated, I started noticing myself judging people for continuing to wear masks.
Mm,
And previously, I was judging anyone who was not wearing a mask. I was really judging them. I was like, you don't care about me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You never answered my question, but this was good too. I
I
appreciate it.
mean, I'm grappling with your question because
No,
I haven't thought about it that much.
I think you should.
Well, I mean, I did give you an honest answer. I did answer you, which is that I think I still would have been in a different type of fear.
Well,
Not,
now,
f- not,
the
not,
answer
not
now,
fear, not fear of getting it, but I would have been in fear of like how this is not the same, necessarily the same kind of fear, but like fear of how people are being, like how people are reacting, like the separation and the judgment. I think there still would have been dissonance there for me,
well,
or
you put
frustration, you
you
know?
answered you answered a different question. I think you put yourself in my shoes.
Uh-huh.
My question was, oh, you're vaccinated, all that, but you now found out that you got duped, and that it actually has, is not what it was.
Yeah,
That
if that
that
was the
would be
case, what would I do? Like what would I have done differently or what would I do now?
now today. Like if this was the breaking news, like
I would do nothing because there's nothing to do.
how would you
What would I do? I don't know.
know? How would you feel?
Hmm. It really requires dropping the ego entirely.
Yeah, I mean that's why I'm asking it. And I'm doing the same exercise. Like how would I feel if I found out today that, you know, it was perfect?
Um, it's hard for me to get past the if I'm like yelling. It's hard for me to get past the fact that I do uh, yeah, I mean, I was thinking about the people who died, but then again, it's like yes, people die every day of various reasons. Um,
And people are dying more now than during COVID. I mean, again, it depends on like, but if you're still listening mainstream, mainstream is now saying we have 300% over mortality. More people are now dying. They don't know why. They don't
mhm.
know what the newest highest cause is unknown. And it's like, but we don't care anymore. We don't care about the access death. This interesting part, not judging it at all, but just going, it's interesting because it's just recently, the one that we all listened to said, wow, it was only 99.9% that were perfectly healthy and we only lost 0.1% of whatever. So it wasn't ever the numbers. This is was my biggest confuser, was the numbers never changed. It was always 99.9. We were never at, but they just did a poll that 50%, and this is I think Democrats, but it's not political, it's just the only study I know. 50% of Democrats believed that you had a 50% chance of dying of COVID. And I'm like, how did that happen? Nobody ever said that. Nobody,
I thought it was weird
right?
to to be told so many conflicting things in the beginning. There was so much confusion. It was like, don't get a mask. Then it
Right.
was get a mask. Um, and I'll tell you the thing that would make me freaking cry is what we put our children through. Because I don't mind really as much as what we went through, but seeing what our children had to go through was really hard.
Yeah. And the elders.
Just seeing them have to wear masks outside because that's what I thought was the right thing to do. That was really hard. You know, like enforcing that. That breaks my heart.
It's okay. You did again. It's perfect. You did what under your information, what your heart, mind, body, and soul was dealing with. You did what you thought was right. You did your best.
But I will say, Falk, is that I is that I did seem to me that washing our hands all the time and wearing masks all the time and not having people cough on each other, not having kids picking their noses and touching each other. To me, it did seem like was making a difference, whether that was COVID or other um, infectious
Oh, of
diseases
course. I
you know,
think it does.
because personally I did not get sick for the entire time of the pandemic, and I never,
Well, that was
just for you to understand, like my personal experience was I never had that before where I wasn't sick. Like I was always getting sick.
I mean, my mom talked about this. This was a lot of doctors' big concern because I think you're right. During the pandemic, yeah, you're isolating yourself, but who's to say that you're not supposed to get sick? That is training your body. It's like a warrior putting himself in the cave where there's no bear, but he never trains for you. Of course, in that year, nothing's going to touch him. But then you got
Right.
to get out into the
But
world again. That is, your body is not like, it's so full of microbes and viruses and bacteria. It needs to be in connection to other bacteria and community. And again, I have zero. So for anybody listening, do not listen to me as a scientific expert. I'm none. I just go by sort of life experience and my family's medical background. But the idea of separation that way, and this is what I mean by we don't have the wherewithal to study this properly, the fact that we are a bacteria ridden machine or organism that can communicate to bacteria outside, and the fact that we have a way to even get sick and do certain processes and put us on our ass and rest. You and I talk about this a lot. These diseases give us everything we need to heal. They're,
okay, but I'm just telling you my experience, the first time in my life ever to have basically 3 years of not being in bed every month was life changing. Was like
and then
a
there's
wonderful thing to be able to feel good consistently.
and then we're full circle again. It was perfect for you. It worked out perfect for you. Like it gave you something that you couldn't have without it.
I mean, it gave us a whole change of life, and all the people that moved out of cities and moved closer to families and moved into smaller towns and smaller cities completely changed their life. There was a mass exodus from LA.
Yeah. Again,
That
people still on
complete like
the
brought everyone back to their core values and core of like, well, what is important in our life, like you're talking about, like you did it. It changed your life, it changed our life. We'd probably still be in LA.
and this is a beautiful point too. You know, we talk a lot about we're one, right? A spiritual community is all about like we're one. We got to realize that. But also we're so different. And you know, so like we can't like the fact how like for example, that was a good thing for you. Everybody exited out of the town. For the people that exited the town way prior, this was a terrible thing because everybody came to our town of Bend. For that was a great example. I live in Bend, Oregon. The pandemic made it that we can't live in Bend anymore. So for us, it was, and again, I'm quotation marking it a terrible thing because again, it was perfect. But when it happened and when the trauma of you can't afford this place or you this isn't worth being here anymore, it's becoming LA, it was like, oh, that's not good. So everybody's experience with the same events is so massively different, right? Like here am I going like, well, I like to get sick and blah blah blah, and you're like, I really needed 4 years of not getting sick because I get sick a lot, you know. And so I guess full circle conversation is it was a big event. It was a big shift of energies. Who cares what it was? Who cares if vaccine or not vaccinated? But it shook things up, and I think it gave people a chance to really regroup,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and check in with what they need. Um,
I would say the thing that I would want to do better is to not use it as a divisiveness. That's a thing that I think is the real, one of the real crises, aside from people dying, is the divisiveness that it caused.
but that started prior, right? That started with Trump. I mean, that's been going on for a minute. That's something I don't get
But
why
it
that.
wasn't up in our faces. It wasn't causing people to make these types of decisions. Like you couldn't escape the divisiveness.
Right,
With politics, you can just not talk about it. You can avoid it.
right,
This you couldn't.
right, right.
Sorry, I
Yeah, that,
interrupted you. Go ahead.
no, 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 that's good. Yeah, I think that that was the biggest, you know, thing about it that I think this where we are one. Again, it's all perfect, right? Like I have to believe that otherwise I would have a very bleak outlook on my and my family's future. I have to believe that we just need this stuff. We need this divisiveness. We need this Ukraine Russia bullshit that we've done a million times and we're doing it again. I've had a lot of judgment on that. And I've decided eventually to just sort of smile at it and go, wow, I love it. It's perfect. Because people are still picking up guns. There's still so many young men running and wanting to play the hero. And I'm not judging them, but I'm like, okay, they still need to get it out.
I think that one of the other benefits, speaking of guns, is that during the pandemic, at least in the first year and a half, people, when everyone was homeschooling, there was no school shootings.
Yeah. But on the flip side, I every 16, 17-year-old I knew wanted to kill themselves. And I don't know how many did, but I know a lot. So it'd be nice to put those numbers together. And again, in the end, does it matter? I think what really matters is that we deal with this divisiveness. I think we deal because we're getting back to the 99.9% are safe, but we made a whole panic pandemic around 0.1%. We have worse disease now and before, but we didn't care that much.
Hmm.
So the divisiveness and the fear and the judging other people, I think that's really what we got to somehow focus on. We really got to unite on a very basic fundamental level because we are so far apart. And
Well, the thing is that what it really highlighted is not knowing what to believe, not knowing what, It was like, oh, well, believe science. Well, okay, but the scientists don't seem to know what's going on either.
They're not agreeing. I mean, that was the other thing. I was like, which scientist? There's papers published, vaccines are unsafe. There's papers published from the same public, like the same people saying, uh, there's no more. And now with AI, it's getting worse. I had my
Hmm.
first moment where I was on the phone with the bank, and because I've been a victim, I've been AI'd. I've talked to AI things and realized, oh, this is not real. But wow, it's very, it imitates humans really well. I was on the phone talking for quite a while, and the only thought I had was, wait, is this a real person? Occupying my present moment space, not listening to her because I was just sort of going, wait a minute, should I have like a, safety word check with her?
You've had experiences with people on the phone where you can't tell
Yeah,
if it's a real
harmless.
person or not?
Harmless. Yeah, the sheriff's department calls me. I think California still, and it's this really high. I'm from the sheriff's department. It's got this perfectly cast sheriff, and he sounds real. He sounds great, and he reacts with a breath and with pauses, and he can talk to you. If you go off the rails, he gets flustered and he's like, "Sorry, I couldn't hear that. Can you say that again?"
How do
You
you
know,
know that this was not a real person?
because I ended up saying something like, "Do you think my wife is cute?" And he was like, "I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. Can you say it again?" And then I would say, like, "Do you like Nutella on your nose?" Well, sorry, I'm sorry, sir, I can't hear you. He wasn't going, "Are you crazy, sir?" I
Wow.
went erratic. I kind of like just
Right.
things that don't make sense. And it was always just, can you repeat that? And it was and there was something just like that Biden, I posted a Biden AI speech about aliens have landed. And
Yeah, I saw.
it was really, really well done. Perfect. But he had no speech problems. He didn't,
Right.
it was just a little too perfect. And that was the same
Mm.
with this guy. But long story short, so we're going to enter an era now where
Yeah. You
who do
don't
you,
know what's real.
which is why full circle, trust yourself. That has been my biggest judgment. Why are so many people trusting the professionals? I'm not anti-science, but science is there to give me data that I read and I decide. And if I can't understand it, then I'm going to learn the subject matter or I'm not going to deal with it.
We never, none, my grandmother, my father, me, my kids, none of us had been through something like this ever. This wasn't like, oh, remember the time when this
He
happened
says this,
before?
and you know what? Let me take this back.
Unprecedented.
I apologize too. Kim says this. My lovely wife says this all the time. She says you grew up with medical professionals. And my father called me in November and he said, "Hey, they just patented a vaccine for a virus called COVID-19. It's coming. Don't worry about it. You're safe. It's nothing." So my personal how I was set up for this pandemic was 35 years of being in the medical world. Um, and yeah, I get it. Like it's hard. It's hard to know who to trust. I trust because I trusted somebody too. I just trusted my parents, you know,
Hmm. Hmm.
to read certain things. But that was not the point. The point was, I think intuitively, we got to get back to a place where the ultimate deciding factor is us. And when we make the decision from our gut and from our best able space to then take responsibility for whatever it is that we create, that's in a nutshell, I think, where I'm hoping that we're going. Making our own choices and then being fully responsible for what we create from them, you know.
Yeah, I mean, something like for me, I don't always go with what Western medical, you know, what most people do. I don't normally do that. But I've also never been in a situation in my history where I felt like there was something where I was being duped, you know?
what about, I mean, again, we should move on to something else because I would respond by what about the opioid crisis? That was massive.
The opioid crisis?
Yeah.
That wasn't affecting me.
Right. Okay. You're saying you personally haven't been affected by being lied to by the medical system. That makes sense. Why
Um,
would you mistrust, right?
no, what I'm saying is I don't generally like I didn't have either of my children in a hospital because I don't trust the hospital to handle my birth, for example. So, no, I don't do what everyone else does medically. Like, I probably would not have gotten my kids vaccinated if it wasn't for my husband wanting something different. Um, so I don't just go along with what everyone does and thinks, in terms of that. But this was a particular situation that I just hadn't experienced before. So,
This was
you know,
bigger than a vaccine. You know, the
mhm.
vaccine was just a symptom. So yeah, I'm just agreeing with you. This was, I try to make it black and white and I try to find answers, but the truth is it's just too complex. I don't know, whatever it is that happened and is currently still happening, I think it's just too complex. We're breaking down a lot of old very, very fast, and we're dealing with the repercussions of having to deal, deal with that change, with that amount of fast change.
It feels like we might understand what happened in the past 4 years in 20 years, 30 years from now a lot more clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always good to have that bird's eye view. Yeah, I can't wait to see the Netflix documentary about the pandemic or
Okay.
the numbers once and like when I'm 65 and I'm like, remember?
Yeah.
And then we'll go, that's that's what it was. um, yeah.
So, all right. You hijacked our
Think something
intro.
else. Yeah, you kept going with it. Listen, you brought up something I've never talked about, and because it really threw my life around, and it's been just recently that I've just recently really forgiven. I've just recently really gone. I still sometimes have these moments where I want the world to wake up. What they did to 30% of America that didn't get vaccinated. They said you're not welcome. And that, as you can tell now, there's still a lot of active in that. So you brought it up, and it's just, I personally still have some working with the pandemic to do, as you can tell. I still hold a little grudge of like,
I didn't bring it up.
no, no, the way the story went, the way my life went, and the bus, like everything that is here is only because of the pandemic and that's the positive and the push of society going, you're not welcome. And me having to go, I gotta find a place to be welcome. I just had a kid. So that led to this big conversation about the pandemic because again it was huge just like it was for everybody else. um but feel free to not use any of it and ask some other questions because it's a tough subject. It'll be around for you. We'll have some work to do on this, but it might not be might not be the lightest.
No, I
But
think that there's trauma on every single person of what we went through, no matter what our feelings were or beliefs were. There's trauma that everyone went through.
yes, yeah,
And I don't think that we're fully processing that trauma.
yeah, I hear.
We're not really want, or most people are not really wanting to talk about it, me included, not really wanting to process the trauma of it. Just let's move on, you know. But
What
it is a trauma. It is a trauma.
think let me say thank you then because I think this is something that, and I've been so shy about talking about it too, and maybe that's a mistake. And I've admired the people that talked about it very calmly, There's this guy Zuby that I recommend. It's just he's just very he doesn't get angry about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think if we skip this, because this is what happened with every other trauma that we've dealt with as a nation, we skip talking about it. We skip the therapeutic work. We skip the shamanistic work. We skip the crying, the screaming, the saying, I fucking hate you, letting it out. And then we can break down and cry and hug each other and go, I'm so sorry, I don't hate you, But we
Mm-hmm.
keep skipping this, you know? And so maybe it's good that it came up and you'll be the judge of what is worth listening to.
I think that I know that I can have a safe conversation with you, whereas if I'm in a space talking about this conversation with somebody else who I don't agree with, I don't necessarily know that I'm going to come out of that conversation feeling safe.
Well, and that's what it takes. So good for you and good for me. We need leaders and people that are having conversations that are strong enough to feel safe with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody behind my opinion, like everybody that only hears the snippets and thinks I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist that thinks the government is killing us all with vaccines, they're listening to me, but I'm safe. I don't think that way. I'm just expressing my truth.
Mm-hmm.
So I can represent that safely. And then you can represent your side where you're just like, I'm just expressing my truth, my feelings, what it did to me, not just my opinions and my fear. And you and I are holding each other accountable, like you've numerous times, like, whoa, 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 and we've both kind of course corrected a little bit and just kept it civil, even though I feel a lot of emotions about this. I'm not going to deny that. But
Yeah,
you create
well,
space,
you,
and
I mean, there were conversations online where people are really unsafe with each other because they feel that they can hide behind the fact that they're not talking in person. So then they're just going to say whatever they want to say without any sort of compassion. Or, because like I was concerned about Chinese people not being treated well. There was a lot of hatred towards Chinese people, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, because supposedly they caused the pandemic. Okay, right? So someone in my life that I was close to that's family was posting stuff, and or I had posted something about, having compassion for Chinese people and not like, you know, being horrible. Like be human, even if you do think that there's some you can't anyway, like you can't that's just generalizing like, oh, well, what if the pandemic did start in China, so therefore it's okay to be horrible to Chinese people? Like, and so because people have these like politicalized ideas about everything, it's like then there became this rudeness towards me because I was trying to stick up for not being horrible to Chinese people. Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, no, that's what it's just one big divisive thing that continues to happen. I think it's still happening now.
But that
Um,
just further um, divided and kind of made me not, because that person was anti-vaccine and because they were having fun and having parties and getting COVID, and I'm like staying home and being safe and sacrificing, but they're being rude to me about me trying to stick up for Chinese people. It like further made me feel like they were wrong.
right, 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 right. Yeah. I mean, I think in the end, all we can do is be responsible for our behavior, and I think you can feel all the rage. You can be on any political side. You can be vaccinated or unvaccinated. You can be the worst, quote unquote, worst person on this planet. If you show up with enough love and respect to let me exist with you, you can do whatever you want. If you go home and you meditate or you scream or you shoot your gun at bottles, whatever you do to move your energy, Do it safely. Do it in your own time. Do it in your 6 feet. You in your bubble. Deal with your
Bec-
shit and show up. If you can't show up and be interested in people that are different than you, then at least be quiet and
Well,
witness that, or go
well,
somewhere.
well, because then there was the insurgents and all of these people that a lot of them were related to hate groups that are taking over the government and smearing poop in, the Capitol. Like, that's not creating a good name for people who are not agreeing with the government.
No, totally. No, it's a shit show, and it's on all sides. The liberal. I've always considered myself democratic until I find out I think I'm actually more libertarian. But voting wise, I've always stood democratic. It's the same thing. I just look at any side now, like the Democrats and the wokeism. They've, they're they're dealing with their traumas, man. There's no more guidance there. This is what I was saying about Patrick Swayze in a weird way. Way to bring back Patrick Swayze. I'm going to try my best. There's no more idols for me on this planet right now. I'm my only idol.
Mhm.
I measure how good I'm doing of a job as an idol by how I judge how I've been to my son and how I've been as a father and how I've been with every single person that I'm coming in touch with. If I've made them happy and I'm myself happy, then I did really great. And I'm looking up to what I did. And if I'm not, I'm going to try to do better. But currently, and I plead for our children, bring an idol is maybe the wrong word.
Like a mentor.
A figure that, well, it's bigger than that, because a mentor is somebody that personally interacts with you and teaches you. But we had icons.
Not necessarily. Mentor, you don't have to personally know a
A
mentor.
symbol, right? I'm talking about a symbol.
Hmm.
Like the president is a symbol. Let's face it. Like he hasn't done anything. No president has ever done anything where I go, oh wow, that really affected me. Besides Biden, right? Which is why I was like, I am voting for him again. I won't vote Trump either, but I was like, he's the reason I can't go to work anymore. He made this possible. So it's the first actual thing that affected me, his policies and him telling all my peers, if you don't get vaccinated, you're a fucking idiot. I was like, I can't vote for you. You're just not, you haven't done any work. You're judging as a leader of the country. That's not good. You got to watch your mouth. Like you can maybe express your feelings, but you got to be careful what you tell people. It's just as divisive. You're just more eloquent than Trump, but you just divided a lot of people. And I'm the witness of it, right? So um, I think we need people again that we can truly go, wow, they got love in their heart. And they rather, they take a choice to like deal with all their struggles in their safe space, but they show up again and again with love in a complicated. I'm not saying Biden didn't have it tough. That was a tough space he was in, but in that space, somebody who chooses a loving way of expressing themselves. And if he can't, then he won't shouldn't touch that subject matter. He shouldn't say anything. And there was a lot of those, like a lot of my Arnold Schwarzenegger. I was like, screw you for Sean Penn. If you're not vaccinated, you're a loaded gun. I'm like, look, whoa, 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 whoa.
That's a lot of language.
Well, and also just, man, that sucks. Like you had so much effect and so much power. And I wish that,
It's the demonization of people and different opinions that makes things difficult.
yes. And it's like that needs to be, not needs to be, but I would love to be a part of a generation that brings forth again people that stand for the opposite of demonization, inclusion. You're welcome. Yes, you fucked up, but that's okay because we all do. I mean, Jesus, in a way. We really truly need a second coming. Some dude or girl or whatever that kind of just stands for that, and we kind of like cheer for it and are excited about that and going, yeah, that's a good message. I think we should. What if we did all hug despite our differences? Wouldn't that be kind of good?
Mm.
Um,
I mean, I'm not, you know, aware of everything Marianne Williamson stands for, but she seems to be sort of close to what you're talking about.
Marianne Williams. I gotta check her out. I don't know that I know her.
She was running for president or trying to. She's a spiritual leader.
That's
She's the one who's that quote, who are we to, hide our darkness? Who are we not? We're a child of God. It's sometimes people think it's Nelson Mandela's speech, but it's actually her speech.
sounds great. I will check her out the moment after this interview goes by.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Let's talk about something that's not that heavy or heavy in different ways.
um, I have no idea what I'm gonna do with this interview because I was not planning on it being a political or
Yeah,
disease
yeah, yeah.
COVID interview. I don't know. I kind of want to just like end this interview and have it
Yeah,
be its own
maybe,
thing.
maybe do another one.
Yeah.
Just curious, what were your questions?
Uh, y- I have a lot of them, but I can share them with you later. I mean,
Yeah, we can do this
I
again.
don't have time to like
I think that's
start.
the. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. I think that's the danger of doing breath work because that clearly was, yeah. If you want to finish the interview, finish it. But as my facilitator, um, it's big. Of course, it came up. Now that I've had this whole conversation with you, Patrick Swayze, integrity, it's big. It's like as big as if you had a black man that really is affected by Black Lives Matter, and that really feels like there's systemic racism. I kind of became this person in a way because I haven't fully ever expressed that because I'm so intent on like never being the victim that I skip it. I've skipped even just pointing my finger at somebody, and in a way, I got to do that. Uh,
Well,
really moving.
the thing is, you have a choice of where you live. You have a choice of what you do, of where you go, of how you do things, of who you're around, of whether you speak or not speak, right?
Whether
But
not speak,
some,
wait.
but you have a lot of choices. You have a
Yeah.
lot of choices as the person that you are. A white
Yes.
man who can go live in whatever country he wants to live in
Right.
and be around whoever you want to be around or not be around whoever you don't want to be around. No one's gonna, you're a very strong person. You don't have a lot to be actually afraid of,
What are you
but
talking about?
but someone who is
I think that's a narrative that you're repeating that I've heard from all my friends.
black
Take transgender then. That's a
or
choice.
Chinese or whatever, like
I didn't mean like
that's not a choice. That's what they
transgender.
are. No matter where they go, they're going to deal with
I hear
racism.
you. I hear you. That was not my point. My point was even those that are deal with racism and that choose to take the narrative of I'm systemically persecuted. It's not every black man. For example, Zuby is like, fuck that narrative. I don't believe that at all. I'm black. I'm not underprivileged. There's no racism. I'm a boss. I wasn't saying about black or white. I was just saying the choice of what narrative that you say is true, right?
He's saying he's a black man and there's no racism.
Not the way that it's portrayed. No, he said there was, but there's just as much racism. Like I know plenty of black people that don't like white people. It's like racism is real, but it's not the systemic thing. Otherwise, I would have no success as a black man. And he said, I'm a millionaire, so I'm just a different black man. You gotta. It's his. Those are his words. So
Okay.
switch it from racism because
It sounds like he has a way of relating to racism that works for him.
that's my point. We all have our way of relating. All my white friends are very sensitive, are the most sensitive towards racism. My black friends are kind of like, yeah, it's kind of always been there. We've been dealing with it.
Right.
And some people are like, well, everybody has their story. My point was, this was the first time I had my story of victimhood
Right, exactly. What
that I
I'm
didn't
saying
like.
is like, I think might want to be careful as to how much you continue to look at it through the lens of victimhood.
It's the first time I think I got to express it, you know?
Because I don't necessarily think you were a victim or you are a victim.
Well, no, but that's how I feel about black people and about transgender and about you and about everybody. I'm with you 100%. You exclude certain medical things. You exclude, for example, the black community. You're like, well, with them, they really are victims. I'm like, no, they're not. It is one law for me. Nobody is a,
I didn't say they're victims.
my point. Well, you kind of did. You defended it. You're like, well, you
I,
don't have the right to be
I,
victim. They
I,
do.
no, I didn't say that.
Well, that's what I
I
heard.
said comparing your situation to racism, I don't think that's fair.
Sure. Well, then I don't get why not. I feel like a victim. They feel like a victim. That's what I'm comparing.
Because there's a difference between like how you feel and like, okay, for example, a black person can go into a certain environment and they can't cover up the fact that they're black, but you could go into any environment you want to and cover up the fact or not just not say anything and people aren't
No, I
going to
couldn't. This is what I'm saying. I
necessarily.
couldn't. I couldn't get work. I was told you're not doing your laundry here. This is where I'm like, have some compassion. This is maybe why I'm expressing it. I think people don't get it. I do you really think I went in? I would have had to get a fake passport. I was told you're not allowed to work. That's what they did to black people. Like, wake up. That is the reality. Do you really think I just had fun and picked the bus? No. I could not
But
fly and see my parents.
yeah,
I
but
could go to any store in Germany. The place I grew up in told me, yes, they couldn't see it, but they checked who I am. What's the difference? Yes, okay, cool. Like I could get away with it if I was criminal. I give you that. A black man can't,
and
you know,
also
say white face. Oh,
you couldn't work in the in as an actor, may I guess, because you chose not to get vaccinated. You're
right,
right, but
right.
you could have gotten
Well, that's what I'm
any
saying.
other job in the world that you
Complicated.
wanted to, no?
Because I don't care about the comparison of black or white, like I said, I don't have any. I'm like, sure, yeah, they had it worse, but they don't because of that color. It's like it's harder for them. A
But it's
white man
not
can
about who has
compare
it
themselves.
worse. I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't compare those two things, but that's
Sure,
just
but
me.
that's not a choice. I think the better comparison is transgender. The transgender debate is this the exact same one because that's a choice, right? And there is
Well,
a
yeah.
huge space for the transgender community to express their victimhood, express how hard it is for them, express how how unjust it is. And there's so many people going, "Yay, power to you!" And like, yeah, we need to be inclusive. So I'm making you a compliment by saying this is the first time in my life that I was given that space for that long by somebody from the other side. Joe Rogan gave me that space. The people
Okay.
everyone that was on my
Okay.
team,
Okay. And
hey,
also,
I got to cry or have
okay.
my anger. And yes, you're 100% right. It's not the lens that I never used to look through that lens. This was the first time because I'm so stingy on it's my fault. It's my fault that I never let myself even go, well, yeah, but also you just go through some hardship and you got to express that. So that was the
Okay.
full circle.
Okay, because there's people who are blacklisted, and I just interviewed Michael Pressman, and his dad was blacklisted because of the McCarthy era for like 12 years. He could not work. He missed out on the height of his career because
Yeah.
he was blacklisted.
Why was he blacklisted? Because he's a communist?
Because I don't know if he was or not, but they thought he was.
Oh,
So, but the thing is like you've gone through this for 3 years. It has changed your life, but you're going to work again soon. You have worked.
I've worked through the pandemic.
You've worked through, yeah, so you've worked.
Yeah, 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 totally.
Yeah. Okay. So why are you saying you couldn't work when you did work?
But again, that's saying to a transgender person, but you survived. You didn't get beaten to the hospital. You got slapped. Fuck up. That's what you're saying to me. You're not having compassion to someone who sucked. I'm sorry that you had to relocate your entire family to the bus because everybody was scared and we thought you're the bad guy. We need to. You said it yourself. You're like, you can't come. I'm scared. And I'm like, okay. People are scared of transgender. Some
But I
hicks are like,
but also everyone had their own version of sacrifice. You know, like I had to homeschool my kids. I had to give up anything I was doing for my life to full-time take care of my
you
children.
chose that though. You didn't
Right.
say that I'm not down for that. I didn't choose it.
Yeah, but but one, yeah.
Oh, I see what you're
But
saying. You're wanting to express your yes. I guess I
I
don't know what we're doing anymore. Like I agree with you. I don't disagree with you on anything.
I'm just saying the choice of the way you're viewing it by saying this is the first time I felt like a victim and I wasn't welcome and I was ostracized and I lost out on things. That's a way of seeing it. And I you know, I feel like I sacrificed and lost out on things too, and things were hard and difficult and heartbreaking, and I didn't get to do things I wanted to do too. And you're saying that's a choice, but to me it wasn't a choice. It was what I felt was the right thing, just like what you felt was the right thing. So I just think,
I guess it goes to the constitution of like my body, my choice. That's
mhm.
all it is. Your choices were not based on who you are and what choices you make.
Well,
Your team,
I understand as a woman,
yeah,
the my body, my choice thing. I totally get that.
that's it. That's all it is. That's all it is. That's all it is. This is why I have such a hard time that now with this debate, nobody gets it. I'm like, why is it so different? Why do women want their choice? And it's so important, and we could never dare to touch that. But yet, mine don't matter, you know? Um, and again, you're right. Like, I don't, that is not what I want to hold on to the moment.
It's because people believed that your choice that you were making by not getting vaccinated was going to affect their life, but in a
Who
life or
believes that about
in
me?
a life or death way, whereas people who women who are saying my body, my choice, don't feel that that choice is affecting anyone else in the
They don't
world,
feel so, but they do.
that
Your choice to have an
they don't
abortion.
think
Yeah.
it's affecting the unborn child within their body, but it's not affecting anyone else in their environment. Like when they go out to go to a job, if they decide to have an abortion or not have an abortion, that's not affecting anyone in their environment.
Not as well, again, I think if we're talking about a vaccine, if it keeps you safe, I shouldn't affect you by not having one. And B, in a smaller way, yeah, like whoever is the father who might want the child, whoever the child, the religious people that believe in life.
I mean, the amount of, okay, but the amount of men that are like, no, I wanted that child even though the mom didn't want it
Sure.
is
Not as
like point 0.0001. I mean, like, come on, like that is
the
not.
amount of people that died from COVID, point one, literally. Those are the numbers. It's so hard for me to understand that you have such a hard time. And again, we're done, but it's just a funny argument and debate because you have such a hard time.
I'm saying why people felt the way they felt,
Right.
why people were making the choices they were making, because it was based on what they thought was going to happen. If you're breathing on me, what's going to happen to me potentially is I could be seriously affected.
No, I get that, and that was a beautiful part that you shared, and I got that. I don't, again, uh, I didn't get it. Like it's not where I come from, but I get it. It's beautiful.
It feels like you're making a choice for me about my body. If you come into my 6 feet and you're and not wearing a mask and you're not vaccinated,
Yeah, that's
it
hard.
feels like you're making a choice for my body.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know. I still have a lot on that.
We should close up.
Yeah, let's close up.
All right. I don't know how we're closing this up.
Your session.
Is it? I think
Yeah,
it's
it
your
is.
I think it's your session.
Well, I mean, but I'm saying you're the one that's holding and handling, so I follow your guidance.
Dude, you hijacked this whole experience, and that's fine. I'm fine with it. This was your experience. I'm just here holding space for what you wanted. I'm like going with what you wanted. This is you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I
All
didn't know
right.
what I wanted, you know.
Okay. So, all right. First of all, I think I want to stop recording. Is this recording? Yes.